Thank y'all for coming today. We don't have a whole lot, but we got 3 little short bills. Deacon James, would you mind saying a prayer for us, please?
Let us bow, please. Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your presence, Lord Heavenly Father, and we ask that you will guide our minds as we do the work of the people of this great state of Georgia. We ask these things in our Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Tell you what, I'm going to change up just a little bit. Chairman Harbin is trying to get some stuff done to get the Board of Regents in line. So we're going to let him go on and do his presentation to us, and then we'll back up and do some more stuff so he can go figure out what to do with them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that I'm going to be getting them in line. That probably would take longer than I have today. But I do want to talk about House Bill 240, which came out of your subcommittee yesterday. This is a very, as we all say, very simple piece of legislation. This deals with retail installment contracts or revolving accounts internally within stores. This just really changes the, right now, if the late fee is $18, which is set by this body. This changes it to $25. It has not been changed in years. This can only be charged once per late time. They have to be more than 10 days late. This just really helps them to recoup the cost of trying to get that payment made. So that's all we're doing is changing that fee from $18 to $25, and I will yield for questions.
Jay had this in subcommittee yesterday. You got any comments, Chairman of subcommittee?
Mr. Chairman, no debate. Everybody passed unanimously.
Anybody have any questions for Representative Harmon? Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank y'all. Appreciate it,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ben.
members of the committee, thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to back up just a little bit. If you'll look in your folder, I think in everybody's folder, aren't they? The subcommittee assignment. It's not. Well, I'll run through them right quick. We still got commercial feed and livestock and poultry, and then that equine subcommittee, about the equine commission, still trying to figure out what to do with that. But then all of a sudden we started getting consumer affairs bills. We got 2 safety belts, consumer reporting thing, which we'll do today, the one we just did, food standards, and then a funeral service contract, and then an recreational vehicle bill, all in consumer affairs, which Jay's the chairman of that. We're privileged today to have Jody Redden with us. He's with Senator Isaacson. Jody, if you want to say anything, or we'll just tell you thank you for coming, whichever you want to do.
Just appreciate the opportunity to be here. Appreciate the work that y'all do.
He did say this morning that Senator Isaacson and Shamlis both were trying to do all they could to get us Peach Care money back to get it where we can get the ball rolling with the kids. All right, Bob, are you ready? House Bill 240.
196.
Oh, 196, excuse me. I read the wrong thing. 196, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. We have met with the subcommittee on this particular proposition that's relating to credit bureaus. And as I said yesterday, it was ironic that it came to the Agriculture Committee, because one of the reasons that we're pushing this is that one farmer that I know had a problem with a credit bureau, and it stemmed another conversation and more conversation. But what this bill does is that a creditor looks at your credit bureau report, sometimes that you know about, sometimes unbeknownst to you as a consumer. In this particular case, the farmer went to buy a tractor or a vehicle of sort and was turned down because when they pulled the credit file up, when he was looking for a loan, they said that you've got a bankruptcy on your file. And so the guy says, I'm not bankrupt. Well, this farmer had bought a bankrupt farm, and whether we want to know it or not, maybe the lawyer should have made sure that it didn't make it to his particular credit file. But nevertheless, what if he had gone to Chattanooga or across the state to buy some piece of equipment, a tractor or so forth, and then been turned right back around because his credit file showed that he had some inferior credit? What this would do, this bill specifically says that if a creditor goes to your credit file, of a consumer's credit file, then that one of the three or all three credit agencies that are operating in the state of Georgia must send notification to that consumer within 7 days, whether it be email or mail, U.S. Postal, sort of. And I want to be put on notice that somebody's looking at my file. I know that there's a lot of things that going on in these credit bureau agencies that we don't know about, but this is one that we do know about. And at home, I receive credit cards in the mail, like many of you do, without any solicitation whatsoever. My children, now an 18-year-old and my 20 and 22-year-old, repeatedly get credit cards in the mail unsolicited. And so they're going into their files and your files. Every member of this committee, they're probably going into your files to look and see if you have enough credit to send you an unsolicited credit card or extend some type of credit. Yesterday, we had questions in the subcommittee from Representative Dubose about a certain matters, and I think that we're going to correct that in this as a committee substitute. One being language to the effect that if it is unsolicited, then this credit bureau reporting agencies have to send you as a consumer within 7 days or some certain time notification that somebody is looking at your file. And if it's solicited, in other words, if you actually go into a business and ask for credit, and there are a number of people that do this on a daily basis, so the cost would be inhibited. The cost would be prohibited for some of these that do it on a daily basis, used car sales and so forth. But this would be primarily for unsolicited. And if, Mr. Chairman, if you could allow Council Wayne Allen to, or Subcommittee Chairman Roberts to talk about the other one, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the council, you've got the language that we just talked about. I don't have it written down. Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow him, I don't have it written down. How we talk.
That'd be fine. Wayne, explain to us kind of what y'all were working on this.
If you'll look on the substitute, LC 2547777S, the language I'm about to read to you would be an additional change to this substitute. If you look on lines 24 through 26, after the words 7 days, strike everything from there to the semicolon at the end of line 26. And replace that stricken language with the following. Notice of any filing with the Consumer Reporting Agency detrimental to the consumer's credit rating or of any inquiry from a potential creditor to which the consumer has not applied for credit. This addresses two concerns that were brought by Mr. Smith and Mr. Roberts. The first one, as it states, if someone were to post or file with a Consumer Reporting Agency something to be detrimental to your credit rating, the Consumer Reporting Agency would have to report that to you. And the second change would provide notice of an unsolicited request for a copy of your credit report, provide the notice to you. That's the language that's worked out this morning, Mr. Chairman.
And that same language you were talking about, Bob?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd appreciate if we could consider this in the final committee substitute, and I appreciate your favorable consideration. And I'd also like to thank Representative Dubose Porter for his comments after the meeting relating to one of these amendments.
After 7 days.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion for that to be adopted as our committee sub, that language.
All right, hang on, let me get a couple
All
here.
right.
Mr. John?
Would you allow him to read that again, Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
That
yeah.
language again, please.
Again, that's after the word 7 days, strike everything until the semicolon at the end of line 26, and replace that stricken language with notice of any filing with the Consumer Reporting Agency detrimental to the consumer's credit rating, or of any inquiry from a potential creditor to which the consumer has not applied for credit.
Thank you.
Anybody? Okay. Kevin, I didn't see
I
you.
have a question, Mr. Chairman. Is there and forgive me for not knowing if it's already in section 393, but is there a definition of what would be detrimental? My concern here would be leaving it up to the credit agency to determine what's detrimental, what I think is detrimental versus what a credit reporting agency might think is detrimental. Is that already provided for in a different code section or subsection?
Well, I was just waiting till everybody else asked questions because I had the same thing. That same question because I didn't know how detrimental was detrimental. Is that a late credit card payment or is that a bankruptcy?
I think the language intended to be broad enough to cover anything that would be detrimental to your, which would lower your credit rating.
Mr. Chairman, I think.
Yeah, Bob.
Mr. Chairman, would you please repeat the language so Representative Porter could hear it, because he just got here, and he's instrumental in part of the changes.
You mind reading it again, Wayne?
That's fine. Again, on line 24 through 26, strike everything after the words 7 days all the way to the semicolon at the end of line 26 and replace the stricken language with the following.
Hold on.
You're working off the committee substitute. So that after the word 7 days, the remainder would read, notice of any filing with the Consumer Reporting Agency detrimental to the consumer's credit rating, or of any inquiry from a potential creditor to which the consumer has not applied for credit.
While you soaking that up, let Lynn Moore ask a question.
Mr. Chairman, is there an urgency to pass this bill out today before we get this thing moving on and see exactly what it is? I mean, once the changes are made, I'm not saying I'm against it, but why are we trying to pass it with, we're looking at a substitute, we're talking about amending the substitute, right?
Yes, sir.
Could we get these things in place, and it only takes a few minutes to pass this thing out, even if we have to go to the speaker after we've all seen it in its true form?
Whatever the committee wishes is fine with me. I just happen to be sitting right here.
Oh, my Lord. You're my chairman, though.
Ellen?
I also have some concerns in that this language does not address the situation that Representative Smith mentioned, where there was some erroneous information already in the report, been already filed. And unless a person takes the action to go and pull his credit report and corrects anything then, this would only deal with any future reporting of negative or detrimental stuff. So
That's right. Kevin, did you get through?
I just never got an answer to my question. How do we define detrimental, and who makes that call? Is it the credit reporting agency? Is it some supervisor? And if it's already defined somewhere else, it's just forgive my ignorance, but I am reluctant to give credit reporting agencies the potential power to interpret this, that they get to determine what means detrimental. So if we don't have it defined somewhere, then I would request that we make some kind of, we don't leave it up to the, we shore it up so it's not up to the credit agencies to determine what's detrimental. And I guess the other thing I would ask is just maybe a simple language, though hopefully it would not be necessary to add before potential creditor, or, so that it would read whether a creditor or potential creditor makes that inquiry. So if you have a current creditor making that inquiry, you're still going to wind up getting those reports.
Will that be it, Wayne? Or not? I don't know.
Just want to make sure I understand the member's intent here. As I understood Representative Smith's desire here was someone you were not currently doing business with. And I think creditor or would imply that you are already doing business with this person.
It would. And if that could be handled separately, if that interferes with the sponsor's intent. What I was trying to do was say not only will we cover the unsolicited, but if you're currently doing business with a creditor and they just want your report for any reason, that you would have the same protections as a potential creditor unsolicited. I'd like to see that, but that's not, to me, as important as just following up on the intent of what I think is a good bill, is making sure it's not the credit agency that's determining what's detrimental. I mean, I'd still like to see that language, but that's not nearly as important to me as coming up with what detrimental means.
You both?
Well, two thoughts on this. One is the detrimental part I'm not following very well, because I know that you make it a problem any time that you're late for a payment of any, your power bill, anything. It does it. It affects your rating score, but it's, what degree is that detrimental, and that be implied to it, so that every time anyone's ever late for any payment by a day that it affects it. I think what we're trying to get at really is where they haven't applied for credit. Is if when you apply for a credit card and you pretty well, or a loan, you pretty much give them approval for them to check your credit number. And I think what Bob's trying to get at is when you get all these credit cards from people, you want to know when people who you didn't give and haven't applied for credit are getting your credit report. That's who I think he's going to have. The bankruptcy farm thing, I think, is on a whole other plane. I think somebody hired the wrong lawyer, or didn't have the deal set right, or didn't do an asset purchase. And if they bought the liability of the credit report of the farm that was in bankruptcy, then the sale of that farm wasn't done in a way that protected the buyer. That's a whole different issue. But I think what you're trying to get to on the credit card solicitations and the other thing is when you haven't applied for credit, but somebody has access to that you want to know they had access to it. Is that what you're trying to get at? Yeah.
That's correct. But then the story about the farmer, of course, I heard his side of the story. I didn't hear the other side of the story. I didn't ask it because I know what's happening at my house and relating to the credit cards and unsolicited and all. But I'm willing to talk about the language that you're talking to, and it's a serious matter. And there's not only just this, there's medical reports and everything that you don't know about and that's going on. It's scary what these credit bureau reports do in this with your file. But at least this one here, they would at least notify you of any action like this. Am I making myself clear there? I want to know when some unsolicited party is looking at our credit bureau report. It's as simple as that. And when they're putting things on notice through the credit reporting agency, with unbeknownst to me as a consumer, I want to know about it. I want to know about it. So that's the intent of the bill.
Yes, sir. You couldn't say something? Oh, I thought you leaned up. Evan?
I've been sitting there trying to figure all this out. I really think that it may be advantageous to split this into two actions from the standpoint that I think very strongly all of us would like to know if somebody is questioning and investigating us and calling for credit reports without our knowledge, and I think that needs to be moved forward, and I believe everybody can support that, would support that. When you get into this business of having them report any detrimental information, we've already got it in law that says you have a right twice a year to request your credit report. Now, if we start wading in too deep in here, we're going to be putting burdens on these companies that are out there trying to do business and assist business people. And you add to the cost of doing business, and I don't know that you want to go there too quick. So I think that maybe needs to be dealt with separately. But I would certainly like to see us go ahead and move forward with some action here that would provide a mechanism that would require anyone that is soliciting our credit report without our permission that we would be notified of that.
Ellis, I kind of had the same question. Is every time you late on a credit card or a light bill, the cost is going to get passed to the end user, which is the fellow wanting to borrow money, in the end of it all. And that's kind of, if you got to report it every time, that's kind of what I had a question about. I'm not saying that don't do it. I just had a question about how much it's going to wind up adding to fellow borrowing money.
If we create a situation here where these credit companies are obligated to send you a notice every time they get some information that you was 2 days late making a payment, or that they picked up on some information that might be interpreted as, I mean, you're going to be at a whale of a cost for them doing business, and that's going to be passed on to the business people that subscribe to that credit bureau service, and it's going to be in terms, business is like a sewer. Everything runs downhill or it don't run at all.
Tom?
Mr. Chairman, about a year ago, I went to somewhere here in Atlanta, I think it was Sears, going to buy a television, and you could, if you took out a credit card with them, you got a discount on the TV. And I had 3 or 4 credit cards, so it wasn't that I needed their credit card, but I said, well, I'll get a discount, I'll take it out. Well, they run a credit report on me and found out I had bad credit. And I always pay my credit card bill. I thought they made a mistake, but come to find out there was some medical bill sometime or another, a small medical bill that didn't get paid, and that made it where I couldn't even get my credit card. And I'm sure if it happened to me, it happens to a lot of our constituents. But I want to ask the Chairman Bob a question. Do you prefer the language here, or you like the language that's been drawn up by the attorney back here?
Thank you, Cousin Smith. I have no problem with any of the language we're talking about, including the definition. And what you're talking to is happening more than we know. And then someone alluded to the cost of doing business. Well, what about the consumer's right to know and the consumer's privacy on those matters that mean the most, and that's rights in America? Where do we draw the line? Does the consumer, or do we allow business to control that consumer at every point in their life? I have no problem with the language and the definition, and if we need to go back to study it, I have no problem. I like the committee process, and the reason I asked the chairman here to read the bill again in front of Representative Dubose, I wanted to make sure that he knew about it before you move forward with it. So, and I appreciate that. But this is an important thing for a number of folks back home, and obviously around this committee, you've had some similar experiences. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to do whatever you need to. If you need to send it back to the subcommittee, I'm fine with that. We've got plenty of time in this session. If it doesn't happen this session, we'll clean it up next session. But I think it's an important piece of legislation that needs to be going forward. So, appreciate your consideration.
Bob, there's about 4 more questions here. Do you mind trying to handle them? Jay?
Well, my question is not, I guess, necessarily for the author. My good friend, Representative Black, and I disagree a little bit on this. I think that this is, from Representative Smith's intent, is a bill that is set out to protect our consumers. And I realize as a small business person as well, sometimes some costs might get put down to me. But at the end of the day, it's about protecting our consumers. And this bill is one for the situation that Chairman Smith there, as well as many other members of this body, as well as this state, has gone through. And it's troubling when you go in and try to have to be able to buy a TV or whatever it is, and then you find out after all these years when you thought you had a great credit rating that for some reason somebody put something on there years ago or may have been just a couple of weeks ago and you didn't have any knowledge about it, and it may not have been your fault. It was wrongly reported on there. And to be able to be denied, I said that's something, in my opinion, that we need to address in this body.
Kevin?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm somewhere right in between. I'm a small businessman, too. I agree with Ellis that we need to be careful about putting too much of a burden. That's why I would say I think the prudent path today is let's do move forward. I do think we have time, and I appreciate the Chairman's willingness to work through the committee process, but I would respectfully suggest that we move forward on the part that we all agree on, which is the unsolicited request for a credit report, and then we go back and look at the detrimental language a little bit, because I think without every time there's a 2-day late payment, you can still come up with, and I think we just need to find the folks out there in the credit reporting world that we need on both sides, we need to speak with to come up with the right definition of what constitutes detrimental. Somebody who can't get credit, that's an obvious case, but there's some cases that are even less serious than that that still need, where the consumer still needs to know without putting an undue burden. So that would be my respectful suggestion today, is move forward on the part that we all agree on, and let's go back and get a little, flesh out the idea of detrimental a little bit more in subcommittee and committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Debo?
Well, I was thinking if you're going to do something tonight, I think it's where the main rub is where you knew when people were getting your credit report when you hadn't applied for credit. Now, that seems to be the main thing here. The detrimental part we can look at more, but if you want to do something on just that part. How does the credit reporting agency know when they get the request for the credit report if someone has requested credit?
Kirby, would you answer that, please?
I'd like to comment
okay.
relating to that. During our subcommittee yesterday, not one person from the 3 credit bureau reporting agencies were there. So there was nobody there to ask a question or make any comment one way or the other. And I understand there's one here today, but what you're talking about there is the very purpose of it. Is that
that's like we were going to narrow it down to. When you have to apply for credit and they ask for credit report, you get some down notice, somebody's checking
correct?
On your, I mean, I think that's probably where we can narrow something down to get to what you're doing and not make it too cumbersome. I don't know.
So, Debo, what you saying is just any time, not whether it's unsolicited or not?
Well, only to let you know when a credit reporting agency has been notified from a place to know where you have not applied for credit. If you've applied for credit, you don't mind them.
Right, okay.
But when you haven't, is what Bob's trying to get to, and I think what most members do. What access people have, so they send you those credit card applications. That's what it's looking at.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Kirby Thompson. I'm with Equifax, and we're the Atlanta-based consumer reporting agency. And I want to apologize, Mr. Smith. I was out of town yesterday, and I couldn't make it to the subcommittee meeting because I would have been glad to be there and answer some of these questions. But I think there is a little bit of confusion about what is permissible under federal law and how you get access to a credit report. And again, I wasn't at the subcommittee, and I don't know exactly what the substitute looks like, but no one can look at your credit report without you approving it. So no one gets access to it. But the issue that I think Representative Smith is talking about is when you get pre-approved offers of credit in the mail. And under the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act, that's called a pre-screen. And that is where, for example, a credit card company will send a list to us and they basically say, we want to solicit credit. We want to solicit consumers that have this kind of credit profile. It may be that they own a home, they have an auto loan, they live in this zip code, whatever it is. They come to us and we give them pre-screened list. And under federal law, they can get access to those lists, but only if they make you a pre-approved offer of credit. No one looks at your credit report. They just purchase a list. And if any consumer chooses not to receive those pre-approved offers of credit, they come to an 800 number at Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. You call an 800 number and you opt out of pre-approved offers of credit, and you stop all those solicitations. But never can anyone get a copy of your credit report unless you authorize it. And that can be authorized in a number of different ways. If you go and apply for a job, when all the paperwork you fill out as part of an employment application, you probably sign a form that says, I give you a right to check my credit, but you've approved that. If you apply for a cell phone, if you're in the Sears, like Mr. Tommy Smith said, you've given them approval and authority to check your credit. But no one may ever see a copy of your credit report unless you approve it, number one, and number two, unless they have a federal permissible purpose. And we screen the people that have that federal permissible purpose. We sign up those companies that have a federal permissible purpose. And only those companies that have that federal purpose, and only those companies that have express authorization from you can get a copy of your credit report. But they can get lists. They can purchase lists of people that fit the demographic profile of the customer they think they'd like to do business with. But only can they send that to you by making a firm offer of credit. They just can't call you up and say, I want you to come. I mean, you can call and ask somebody to get a loan at the bank, but you can't buy that list from the credit reporting agency and use that list unless you make a firm offer of credit. And so I think there's a little distinction that we need to look at, and I've welcomed a chance to work with the committee on that and any other issues, but I think that needs to be cleared up just a little bit, and I hope I've answered those questions.
First thing you can do is give us all that phone number so our mailman will have about a third less to carry.
It is something like
just print it out and give it to us sometime.
I'll email it to you. I'll send your secretary, she can send it to the whole committee. But we really get hundreds of thousands of people every month that ask us to opt out. And you can opt out for, I think it's 7 years, or you can say permanently, I don't want anybody to ever send me an unsolicited offer of credit. But never have they looked at your credit report. You met the profile of the customer they like to do business with, and they sent you that form in the mail that says fill out this application, and then you can get credit. But if you notice, when you get something in the mailbox, it does have all the information that they need to check your credit, and that's when you authorize them to see it. But they have not seen a copy of your credit report.
Thank you, Kirby. Ellen?
I want to just reaffirm what you said and suggest that y'all do a better job of publicizing that opt-out number.
Yes, sir.
Because I opt out on all these faxes, and that number works because I don't know how they keep keeping up with. I reckon maybe they come up with other numbers, but before I started opting out on them, I used to get that gum faxes on top of faxes. But if you opt out,
can I make one?
I've never heard of opting out on these credit things.
That is another good point, though. If you pull a copy of your credit report, and Mr. Ellis is exactly right, you get 2 free copies in the state of Georgia, and after the 2003 Federal Fact Act, you get a federal copy. So you really can get 3 free copies. When you pull a copy of your credit report, you will see listings of credit card companies that are listed on there, and it has a little code behind it that says PRN, and that is a promotional, pre-approved, pre-screened. And that means that they indeed came to us and purchased a list, that you were on the list of the demographic profile they asked for, and that means that they sent you that pre-approved offer. It doesn't mean that they got a copy of your credit report. It doesn't mean that you did anything with it. But by law, we have to post in the credit file all the people that ask us for a copy or ask us to put you on a list that they may solicit. And then if indeed they do solicit you and send you that opportunity to apply for credit, it'll be posted in your credit report. But those postings do not affect your credit. It's what we call a soft inquiry, and it is truly a pre-screened offer, which meant you fit the profile that, Cap One or Discover or American Express. You fit the profile of the customer they thought they wanted to do business with, and they sent you an offer. But if you didn't fill out that credit application, they didn't look at a copy of your credit report. Federal law just says we have to post it in your credit file and tell you that indeed they ask us to send your name to them.
All right, Jay.
God, I got a question. Please.
Yes, sir.
If someone, in other words, files something on your credit report, as I said earlier, is there any way that we can, the language in here, that we would be able to be notified? I know detrimental, there's some conversation of what the definition of detrimental is. But that is a problem that is very wide throughout the state of Georgia. And it happens anywhere from a very small to a very large number. And I think it's something that we definitely need to address. And I realize you can get 2 copies of your credit report, but a lot of people don't know that. And at the end of the day, I mean, you think about it, if they do it this week and I go in next week to borrow some money, then I don't know nothing about it. I mean, it's tough to know when you got to ask for that credit report. What we need to do is get to a point where that person is notified if they are, if their credit is damaged, so to speak.
Currently, we do not do that today. And I guess there are 2 ways to do that. You could ask the creditor to send a copy to the consumer, or we as a consumer reporting agency could send a copy to the consumer. But I will agree with some of the comments made here today. It would add tremendous cost to doing credit and tremendous cost to business. We post 1 million pieces of information into credit files every day. We have 220 million credit files just at Equifax. And we have 30,000 different data furnishers. And that's from cell phone companies to, Ford Motor Credit, banks, whatever. And so there are literally millions of pieces of information that go into maybe not your credit file, but every credit file on a daily basis. And that notification could be a costly burden to us. It would be passed on, obviously, to the credit grantor, and that would ultimately be passed on to the consumer. So it could be done, but the paperwork and the frequency, and I guess I did bring a report from Congress, the value to the consumer. Congress has looked at this and said they think it's of limited value to the consumer when they have 3 opportunities to look at their credit report. But you're exactly right. The credit report is a changing snapshot of your credit picture. And indeed, what's in there today may not be in there tomorrow. But there are ways you can attack it, but I will have to tell you honestly, it could add some significant cost, for the borrower and for the credit company, our company, and also for that credit grantor, the banker. And all those costs would be added up, and it could be a burden.
We go in at 3 o'clock today, and I don't want to make anybody late by discussing this thing the rest of the day. Would it be any way we could work this thing out? And I want to help Bob, and I understand what he's doing. And your buddy with the bankruptcy that he bought the farm.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you allowing me to speak again. As I said earlier, I have no problem going back to the subcommittee with this if the Honorable Chairman of the subcommittee would allow me to do that. But yesterday when we met, nobody was there from the 3 credit reporting agencies. And maybe during the next subcommittee meeting, you can have Wisteria and Uniglobe and then Equifax there. Maybe they could tell their side of the story or whatever. But I've heard over and over and over it's going to cost somebody some money. What about the consumer? The consumer. I mean, where Cousin Smith here was going to try to buy a TV and he couldn't do it because he didn't know about his credit file. And then when I hear the comment about nobody can get access to your credit file unless you give authorization, well, maybe the fine print in some of these authorizations is what we need to look at. When you go to the doctor's office and you fill out fine print saying that somebody's got the right to look at your health report, then maybe we need to look at that too as well while we're in the subcommittee. So I'd love to, if we could, discuss this. There's a lot of consumers out there that have a problem with this. And
Everybody's
and
sitting
the
up
cost
here
of it
agrees
is
with you,
one
Bob.
thing, but at some point, do the consumers matter? And that's what I'm saying this bill is all about. So it's your pleasure. I do what you want this year, next year, the following year. But I appreciate your whatever you do, sir.
I got 3 lights on up here. Do y'all, Tommy, Alice?
I think we've already discussed what I had in mind.
Mr. Chairman, I just want. Am I recognized?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just hope we can get this thing passed this year, because we got folks out there that need some relief now. And I'll just say briefly, and I'm just using me as an example, it wasn't a big bill. It was like, I think, a couple of $100 that my insurance didn't pay, and I didn't know they didn't pay it. And it was 3 or 4 years old. And that was an isolated event, but it kept me from getting it. They went ahead, since I had another credit card, and they went ahead and let me have the discount. But anyway, a lot of people are suffering out there, and I sure hope we can do something this year on this.
And I think we can. We just got to get the little fine print worked out. Is that okay with y'all? I don't want to have to table the thing. We can just kind of put it off a little bit. Is that all right?
Send it back to subcommittee.
So, Jay, y'all mind looking at it again, or maybe not necessarily in a, I will not say that. I was going to tell you not in a committee meeting. You can't get nothing done in a committee meeting. But just sit down and talk about it, yeah. Bob, thank you. We're going to fix it. And I said, thank you, Bob. We're going to fix it and make you happy. You ain't Kirby. All right, we got one more little resolution. All it does is urge Congress, when they rewrite the farm bill, to make it more transparent, look at the family farms, and look at the sugar policy a little harder, or a little more fair. It's the most controversial part of the farm bill, because it benefits just a very few people. This thing is written not necessarily hammering on Congress about the farm bill, because we grow peanuts and cotton in the state of Georgia. We don't grow sugar, but it's just urging Congress to take a look at the sugar policy within the farm bill. I realize urging Congress is like trying to put the elephant with a matchbox car, but anyway, that's all this does. Georgia Ag Business Council's okay with it. Farm Bureau's okay with it. Soft drink people are okay with it. So if y'all I'd entertain a motion on it, or if you have any questions, we'll find somebody that can answer.
Make a motion. Who pass?
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, thank y'all. We'll work on Bob's bill and try to get both sides happy and look after the folks that we're supposed to be looking after. We'll let you know about when the next meeting is.